Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 52, A New Gamble and a Port of Refuge. Oda Sakamosuke faced Sakaguchi Ongo's questioning and calmly replied, Komai Dakuin is asking how to write a novel with love as the theme. A flash of darkness passed through Dazai Osamu's eyes as he leaned over to ask, Oh? Komai Dakuin wants to write a novel too? Just a bit curious, Komai Nagito said. I wanted to understand the thought process of a writer when they write. For now, it seems that it's mainly experience and imagination, along with immersion. The calico cat beside them had a certain look in its eyes. Sensei, this isn't cheating, it's just normal reference material, nothing more. Please look away, or else it'll show. Why is it that the topic is love? Dazai Osamu asked with a laugh, seemingly without any other meaning. I thought maybe someone assigned it to you as homework. Komai Nagito's expression didn't reveal any hint, just a topic, that's all. Oda Sakamosuke vouched for him, yes, initially it was supposed to be for my novel, originally about familial love, but recently the kids have been asking if I could find them a stepmother, so it led to this topic. Oda Saku. Dazai Osamu looked helplessly at the Oda Sakamosuke who interrupted him. Huh? Oda Sakamosuke glanced over in confusion, should I not have mentioned this to him? Sakaguchi Ongo, although he also felt that something was not quite right, still instinctively sided with Komai Nagito, knowing they were on the same side. Dazai, Komai Dakuin isn't that young anymore, and it's about time he started to take an interest in this kind of topic. Both his parents have passed away, and he has no real friends at school. It's only natural that he'd be glad to have someone to talk about this with. Dazai Osamu. What kind of feeling is this, being isolated? Even so, Dazai Osamu did not regret bringing Komai Nagito to the Lupin bar. Oda Sakamosuke and Sakaguchi Ongo were people he found within the port mafia, able to be friends while sharing an identity underground. Meanwhile, Komai Nagito was someone rare to him, someone from outside the world. Moreover, due to Mori Ogai's curious attention, Dazai Osamu didn't even need to avoid the boss's watchful gaze when forming a friendship with Komai Nagito, which gave him a strangely relaxed feeling. Dazai Osamu had long lost the ability to enjoy ordinary tranquility. If he had to interact with truly normal people, he'd get bored quite easily, but Komai Nagito was someone he found who could break the mundane from his otherwise disconnected daily life. He could chat with him about anything, even things that would astonish and amaze Dazai Osamu to hear about, all sorts of unexpected things. He could talk about everyday trivialities, and Dazai Osamu could complain to him about his superior, rant about the foolish actions of subordinates, gossip about the weaknesses and backstories of enemies, all without worrying that the other would either be startled or yell in response. Through Komai Nagito, Dazai Osamu reconnected with something that hadn't been a part of his daily life for a long time. This feeling was truly refreshing, and until now, Dazai Osamu hadn't disliked it at all. In fact, Dazai Osamu was seriously considering becoming Komai Nagito's friend. If succeeded, in what form would he welcome death? Truly curious awe. After the celebratory gathering ended, Dazai Osamu, acting as a perfectly qualified friend, brought Komai Nagito back to Kudo Shinichi's house. When Kudo Shinichi opened the door, he was surprised. Ah. Komai senpai, your hand. Ha, I fell down, accidentally fractured it. How could you fall so badly that you ended up with a fractured bone? Kudo Shinichi complained while helping Komai Nagito into the house. Standing aside, Dazai Osamu smiled and said, Komai Dakuin only has a fractured hand, his legs are fine. Deducing that Dazai Osamu wouldn't really do anything to him, Kudo Shinichi, slightly annoyed, said, Thank you for bringing senpai back. Is there anything else? It was impossible for him to treat a mafia member, whose hands were stained with who knows how many lives, with special kindness. If there were evidence, he could put Dazai Osamu in prison right now. Kudo-kun really doesn't welcome me, huh? Dazai Osamu exaggeratedly sighed. Well then, I leave Komai Dakuin in your care. Good night, Komai Dakuin. Komai Nagito replied, Good night, Dazai-kun. Kudo Shinichi closed the door and turned to ask, "Senpai, did you get injured while at Dazio-samu's place? Did you run into some unfriendly people?" Komaeda Nagito had a surprised and delighted expression. Is this the deduction of Kudo-kun the detective? Amazing ah! As expected of someone who set his sights on becoming a detective. Senpai, sometimes I really don't know if you're deliberately changing the subject or truly can't grasp the main point. Kudo Shinichi said helplessly, that's why I said, the mafia is very dangerous. Komaeda senpai really doesn't need to get too deeply involved with them. Usually when Dazio-samu comes looking for you, it's already one thing, but you really don't need to go to the mafia's territory ah. Don't worry. Komaeda Nagito said with a smile, I have very good luck, you know. Nothing will really happen. All misfortunes are just laying the groundwork for luck. Kudo Shinichi hesitated to speak. In the past, he could convince himself that all those things that happened to Komaeda Nagito could be explained by coincidence, but now, after spending not even 2 days with Komaeda Nagito, the number of coincidences they encountered was so many that he couldn't count them. Kudo Shinichi found that he couldn't even convince himself, let alone convince Komaeda senpai. In the end, Kudo Shinichi still gave up, thinking to himself that it was better to pay more attention. After all, senpai had been through it for so many years, he probably knew well enough. However, senpai, did you see it when you came back? Kudo Shinichi asked in a complex tone, your house burned down. Although Kudo Shinichi had already been warned by Komaeda Nagito, but he couldn't believe how arrogant the criminal is. How long has it been and they already burned down the house? Kudo Shinichi could only report the incident first, suppressing his urge to step forward and check the situation, thinking that if the police could get any information, they must have some kind of plan and would catch the criminal, right? Then he wouldn't need to add more trouble. However, Kudo Shinichi was disappointed. Such a simple arson, without any technical skill needed, how could it involve a core member of the organization? Of course, they just found a small underling to directly carry out the task. Japan's police might have received the information, but it's not possible for them to act rashly without certainty, otherwise, it could risk exposing their undercover operatives among the small fry. They would prefer to receive information first before taking action, instead of putting their operatives in a dangerous position. As a result, the black organization burned down Komaeda Nagito's newly purchased house, and it only cost them a minor henchman in exchange. Komaeda Nagito nodded, I know, the agent contacted me. He was at the bar just now when he suddenly received a call from his agent, who told him about this matter. The agent's tone was truly one of speechlessness. Knowing he hadn't given up and still wanted to continue looking for a place, the agent was moved and promised to help him find a place with good feng shui next time. Unfortunately, this isn't a feng shui issue. Kudo Shinichi comforted him, it's okay, senpai, you can stay at my place until you find a new home. My parents have already settled in America, so this place is basically free. Komaeda Nagito was truly moved, Kudo-kun, you are such a kind person, truly dazzling. I hope that one day I can become a stepping stone for your blooming hope. Kudo Shinichi, senpai, you should rest. As Komaeda Nagito received the news that his house got burned down in the Kudo's residence, Dazio-samu returned to Yokohama, and was called by Mori Ogai. What kind of mafia gets off work as soon as evening arrives? If there's something to do, you have to come. How was playing with Komaeda-kun? Mori Ogai asked with a smile, like a parent normally concerned about their child's friendships. Dazio-samu remained expressionless, just like that. Although earlier I said you had plenty of chances to test Komaeda-kun, there's no need to continue now. We have a lot of work here, and we can't have you slacking off every day. It's unbecoming for an executive to always be going out to play, isn't it? Mori Ogai said gently. Of course, if you still want to look for Komaeda-kun later, that's not an issue, but you can't use it as an excuse to slack off anymore. Dazio-samu narrowed his eyes slightly, assessing Mori Ogai, and a few guesses crossed his mind. He slowly nodded, I understand. You called me here just for this. Look at those documents on my desk. Mori Ogai said, "Can't I complain a bit?" This stack of documents required 2 trolleys to move them all, and now they're all piled up on the boss's desk, though they should originally have been in Dazai-Osamu's office. Given the circumstances, complaining a bit was quite normal. Of course, Mori-san is the boss, so I'll listen to complaints all night long. Dazai-Osamu said, but originally, neither the boss nor I needed to handle this much. It's all because Boss Mori dismissed an executive. That was the previous leader's faction. Originally, it wasn't likely that he would stay. Although, if he hadn't gone to contact that crow group, he might have still been useful for a bit longer. Mori Ogai sighed, not enough manpower. Actually, the people from that crow group seem quite useful. I wonder if we could recruit a few of them over here. You can try, but I think the chances of success are low. Let's not talk about that. Feeling utterly exhausted, Mori Ogai brushed his hair back and redirected the topic. What gift did Komaeda-kun give you? Dazai-Osamu raised an eyebrow. Dazai-Osamu thought for a moment, a hint of realization appearing in his mind, and replied. Nothing, just a book signed by Natsume Soseki. Mori Ogai. He forcibly suppressed his shocked expression, calmly nodded, I see, then make sure you return the courtesy. What the heck, since when did Natsume-sensei sign books for others? Even as his disciple he never got one. Mori Ogai also didn't think it was a forged handwriting, because it wasn't necessary. Putting effort into this wouldn't even be as useful as picking Dazai from work. Dazai-Osamu wasn't particularly fond of Natsume Soseki. Besides, from all the information before, in Mori Ogai's eyes, it was clear that Komaeda Nagito and Natsume Soseki had some connection. If it weren't for the seriousness of their falling out back then, Mori Ogai would have even thought of calling Fukuzawa Yukichi right now, asking if Sensei had signed any books, and subtly hinting whether he had been in contact with Sensei recently. Natsume-sensei is really too capricious. If it weren't for Dazai-Osamu coincidentally knowing Komaeda Nagito and having a close relationship, always able to gather intel, who knows when he would have discovered that he had gained a junior disciple. But thinking back, Natsume-sensei's purpose in taking him and Fukuzawa Yukichi back then, he could still understand. However, looking at this Komaeda Nagito's data, he doesn't seem to have any particular sense of responsibility, nor does he appear capable of having any significant impact on Yokohama or Japan. Mori Ogai thought about it 100 times but still couldn't figure it out. This kind of matter couldn't be discussed with anyone, and the people he could have broached such topics with had severed ties with him long ago. So, he could only continue to go over the documents like something stuck in his throat, eventually forcing half of them onto Dazai-Osamu, making him work overtime together. Dazai-Osamu called someone to bring over a trolley and then casually asked a question. Boss Mori, did you know there's someone in the port mafia running a secret betting game? Mori Ogai didn't stop his writing. Is there something like that? Well, it's pretty normal, isn't it? Everyone has too few ways to entertain themselves. As long as there's no major issue, just let them play. Forcing strict policies would only create resentment. Who? They are betting on when your hairstyle will turn into a Mediterranean look, when your hairline will recede by 3 centimeters, and when you'll start wearing a wig. Isn't that of no concern? Mori Ogai couldn't help but look up. There's even a bet like this. Dazai-Osamu said lightly, I don't know, I just heard about it. It's really strange, isn't it? Mori Ogai looked at Dazai-Osamu suspiciously. What are you trying to say? No problem, just saying a bit. I think you should at least have the right to feel appreciated, boss. Dazai-Osamu smiled while directing people to move the documents. I have to go back to the office for overtime. Boss, you should also take care to rest. Be careful about your hairline. Clearly a doctor but can't treat hair loss, right? The change is actually quite noticeable now. Mori Ogai, feeling like his heart was pierced. Do you think I don't want to? But look at the richest person in the world's hairline. Even with all that money they can't fix it. If I could invent a remedy for baldness, I would become the richest person in the world out of gratitude. Mori Ogai felt his head ache after Dazai Osamu left, and called in Ozaki Koyo, who had just completed an intel inquiry, to subtly ask about the gambling situation. I remember, Koyo, you said you wanted to set up a bet to let everyone relax, right? Mori Ogai coughed lightly. It doesn't have anything to do with me, does it? This wasn't just a matter of appearance, this concerned the dignity of the boss. He had only just established himself firmly within the port mafia, he really couldn't afford this kind of inexplicable mess affecting things. No, Ozaki Koyo replied strangely, anything relating to the boss is banned, even executives are the same. How come you've suddenly thought of asking this? Mori Ogai immediately betrayed Dazai Osamu. When Ozaki Koyo heard, she immediately connected the dots. Today, the discussion about when Dazai-kun will finally get a partner was quite lively. I thought he might have heard something and wanted to know who the bookmaker is. He suspects it's me. Possibly. Ozaki Koyo snorted, it could also be a veiled warning to the bookmaker. But I will not be intimidated. Mori Ogai nodded in agreement. Komaida's matter today has made some people change their bet. Initially, they wagered that he wouldn't be able to find a partner before turning 20, but now some are betting that he could find love this year. Ozaki Koyo shook her head, and there are also people urging me to quickly confirm whether Komaida-kun is Dazai-kun's lover or not. Let's add to the bet. Mori Ogai suggested, whether Komaida-kun is Dazai-kun's lover or just an ordinary friend. Ozaki Koyo pondered for a moment and agreed. Promising no cheating, Dazai Osamu used this as an exchange to have Sakaguchi Ango inform him about the progress of the bets. Looking at the new bet about whether he and Komaida were friends or lovers, he snorted with a laugh. I knew it. He rested his chin on his hand, while his other hand twirled a pen, if the dealer goes to find Komaida-kun to confirm. It can only lead to the conclusion that they're not even friends, it's practically KO in the dealer. Thinking of this, Dazai Osamu felt somewhat frustrated yet also somewhat eager to take on the challenge. Komaida-kun is really hard to handle, it's almost impossible to win him over. Or rather, should it be said that a specific unique event needs to be triggered first? However, in these recent days, Dazai Osamu had been overwhelmed with work, one matter after another in Yokohama, leaving no time at all to go to Tokyo. Waiting until July, many times, in these 2 months, he and Komaida Nagito met less than 10 times. However, conversely, Komaida Nagito had seen him a few more times than he had seen Komaida Nagito. For instance, today, Komaida Nagito returned to the Yokohama home, opened the door, and while changing shoes at the entrance, saw shoes that did not belong to him. But he just glanced at them and calmly entered the living room, then unsurprisingly found Dazai Osamu lying on the sofa in the living room. The other seemed to be asleep already, even his breathing was almost inaudible. Komaida Nagito carefully tried to return to his own bedroom. Based on past habits, perhaps by tomorrow morning, that person outside will have disappeared. This is how many times Komaida Nagito has seen Dazai Osamu, and why it seems to be more frequent in comparison. No one knows when it started, but Dazai Osamu had turned Komaida Nagito's home in Yokohama into a lazy retreat. Ignoring those subordinates filled with worthless scraps, even though Boss Mori's intention was for them to keep an eye on Dazai Osamu, to prevent him from attempting suicide at every little inconvenience or going missing during work and wasting time, but they didn't dare to enter Komaida Nagito's house. You want to talk about preventing the executive from committing suicide, or pulling them up after they attempted suicide, or directly asking task-related questions during the time when the executive is slowly eating to drag out time on purpose, these actions are still considered acceptable. Even if it means Dazai, the executive, would hold a grudge, at least they are justified reasons, and if the executive wants revenge, they wouldn't cross the line, and the boss would also step in to say a few words. But that's the executive's notorious lover. Who knows what you might see upon entering? Do you want to bring the documents over when the executive is in the middle of some activity and say, the boss asked you to review these documents while you're working out? They had offended him before, but they are not on the same level. If you really want to do it, I think you just don't want to live anymore. Hiding at Komaida Nagito's house, Dazai-Osamu even called Mori Ogai, "Boss, this is Komaeda-kun's place. If they mess around and damage Komaeda-kun's place, and something unexpected happens, I won't be responsible." "Dazai-kun," Mori Ogai said earnestly, "you are an executive now, you can't keep avoiding work. Is that so? I thought boss intended to forcefully relocate me with all this work." Dazai-Osamu said, "Although I don't know what you've been busy with lately, insisting on dumping all the tasks on me, I hope you can hurry up a bit. Honestly, I don't really care what shape the port mafia ends up in." Recently, Mori Ogai had been negotiating with the government about the skilled business permit, but without achieving any favorable results. As a last resort, he made Dazai-Osamu take on so much work, because there were many matters he couldn't entrust to anyone else. Dazai-Osamu knew, however, that this situation couldn't go on for too long. If it continued, he might truly abandon his responsibilities, so he had to swear to recover quickly. Well, at least he basically confirmed this time that normal interactions with the port mafia wouldn't get him the skilled business permit, so there was no need to waste any more time. It seemed he had to make some small moves to force the special division to seek help from the port mafia. Not mentioning what kind of resolve Mori Ogai might have made during this time, but after going through all of this, it did indeed make Dazai-Osamu develop a habit. Dazai-Osamu, when thinking of a quiet place, would go to Komaeda Nagito's house, and even Akutagawa Yunosuke had been persuaded by others not to come near. This place was practically a perfect harbor. Komaeda Nagito didn't have any opinion on this, as it didn't affect him much. After all, Dazai-Osamu didn't need anything from him, and most of the time, he wasn't even home. It was like knowing a stray cat that often came by to find shelter. However, occasionally coming home to discover there was suddenly another person, there was a strange feeling, though Komaeda Nagito was too lazy to think deeply about it, and gradually, it became a habit. Today, as he was walking past the sofa, his coat's hem was suddenly caught by Dazai-Osamu. "Komaeda-kun." Dazai-Osamu yawned as he sat up, his slightly curled black hair a tangled mess. "You're back quite early today, huh?" "Yeah, because it's summer vacation," Komaeda Nagito replied. In Japan, the school year is divided into 3 terms. Basically, the first term runs from April to July, and at the end of July, summer vacation begins. The new term starts at the end of August, then there's a winter break at the end of December, and finally a spring break from late January to February. Summer vacation. Dazai-Osamu took a moment to recall. "Ah, got it. So, Komaeda-kun, will you be in Yokohama the whole time?" Dazai-Osamu really wasn't well versed in school matters. After all, it felt too far removed from him. If he hadn't known Komaeda Nagito, he probably wouldn't have paid attention to any of this. "No." Komaeda Nagito replied, "During summer vacation, I'll be going to America with Kudo-kun." Dazai-Osamu's eyes widened. "Who?" "To see Kudo Yusaku-san. I also know someone else there, a detective novelist." Komaeda Nagito looked quite pleased, "Plus, I helped out a lady before, and she invited me over too. I think going to America might be a pretty good idea." Dazai-Osamu. "Dazai-kun, have you been to America?" Komaeda Nagito casually asked. "No." Dazai-Osamu hugged the fur blanket and sank back into the sofa. Though he was about to go soon. Chapter 52 End.